Hello, it's me, Christine. Welcome to my little crime corner. How are you today? I know I end a lot of videos with reminding you to be careful and to be aware of your surroundings, but life is so unexpected and you never know what might happen. Something as everyday as just walking your dog can turn into a years-long mystery. We are in New Zealand today to meet a girl named Kirsty Bentley. Kirsty was born on July 18th, 1983, in Christchurch to Jill and Sid Bentley. She had an older brother named John, and the family was very close. Kirsty was described by her friends and family as loving, vibrant, and compassionate. She had good people skills, and I'm sure, like a lot of us, she was way more confident with talking with people that she knew, but was more on the shy side with people she had just met. Kirsty was currently attending Ashburton College and had recently begun dating a boy who she met at school. She had a close-knit friend group and a lot of support at home. On December 31st, 1998, at around 10:30 a.m., Kirsty met a friend at a local library. The two went shopping, and around midday, they went and had lunch at a McDonald's. At around 2:30 that afternoon, Kirsty was driven home by her friend's sister. When she had gotten home, her brother John had told her that while she was out, she had gotten a phone call from her boyfriend, wanting her to give him a call back. According to phone records, Kirsty called her boyfriend back at 2:38. He didn't pick up, so she left him a short message, this time asking him to call her back. A few minutes later, Kirsty then got the family dog, a black lab named Abby, ready to go for a walk. She figured by the time she got back, if her boyfriend didn't give her a call, then she would try and call him again. She got ready and walked out of the house. Although John did not see or hear Kirsty leave, a neighbor had said that she saw Kirsty walking with Abby past her house right at 3:05. This is unfortunately where the trail ends, as the timeline of exactly what happens next is unclear. At around 4:30 that evening, Kirsty's boyfriend called back again and John answered the phone, and it was just then that John had realized that Kirsty and Abby hadn't come home yet. Their mother, Jill, returned home from work at 5:15, and John told her that Kirsty had taken Abby out for a walk sometime around 3, and they hadn't come back. Jill called Kirsty's boyfriend and asked if she was there, or if he had heard from her, and he said he hadn't. Remember, they had been trying to reach one another on the phone all day and had kept missing each other. Jill then went outside and walked the usual route that Kirsty took to walk Abby. She walked all the way down to the Ashburton River, then made her way back home as she was getting more and more anxious. Once Jill returned home, both she and John thought it was best that they remained at the house, just in case Kirsty came back. They didn't want to both be out at the same time, since their father was expected home very soon. They just thought, let's wait until he comes back. After a little more time had passed, just around 6 o'clock, John then decided to go outside, retrace the trail, and he saw no trace of Kirsty or Abby. It was also around this time that their dad, Sid, had returned home from work. Once Jill and John had updated him on the situation, he immediately called the police. The police arrived shortly after receiving his call, and immediately they began their search, canvassing the area where Kirsty was known to have gone. As the hours passed, the search grew more and more intense, with more law enforcement, as well as the Bentleys' friends and family members, joined in on the search. The search lasted all night and into the early morning hours, unfortunately, turning up nothing. The search resumed again at 8 o'clock that morning. Just after 10 a.m., Abby was found near the Ashburton River, and her leash seemed to be deliberately tied to a tree. It is not clear why Abby was not found the previous night, as this general area was searched, but I guess the trees and brush were just so dense that she might have been missed. She also didn't bark if she was there, so she wasn't able to signal in that regard. Upon first inspection, the leash that had been used to tie her to the tree was the same type as owned by the Bentleys, but the family did not believe that this was their leash. There was a pair of underwear and shorts that was found near the tree that Abby was tied to, and these were later determined as belonging to Kirsty. The search for Kirsty continued for the next 16 days, and each search included more and more volunteers joining police, and the New Zealand Army even sent troops to assist in the search. The area of focus centered around the Ashburton Township, but then the perimeter expanded to the Canterbury area. The search came to a halt on January 17th, which would have been just one day before Kirsty's 16th birthday, when two men reported to police that they had discovered the decomposing body of a young woman in a dense patch of brush around 25 miles from the Ashburton area. The body was found in the fetal position at the bottom of the embankment, concealed by a thin layer of leaves. When police arrived, they discovered that the young woman was fully clothed, wearing a black tank top and a blue butterfly print sarong. It was later confirmed that this is what Kirsty had been wearing earlier that day. Upon a closer inspection, it was discovered that her underwear was missing. If you recall, that had been found more than 2 weeks earlier in the area around the tree where Abby was found tied to. She also had a scrunchie around her wrist, indicating that her hair was down. This was unusual since she rarely left home without her hair up, especially when going for a walk. The police almost weren't called, as the area that she was found was a known area for growing cannabis, and these two men were worried that they might get in trouble, but they knew that they had to say something. This was far too important to not alert police, even if there were legal consequences for them. Because of the temperatures at that time of year, remember it would have been midsummer in New Zealand, her body was in an advanced stage of decomposition. She was carefully transported to the hospital for an autopsy. It took several days to get dental record confirmation. Testing then concluded that this was in fact Kirsty Bentley. It was determined that Kirsty's cause of death was blunt force trauma to the right side of the back of her head. The blow was so hard that it had fractured her skull. The medical examiner stated that she would have died shortly after being struck. He also believed that Kirsty was most likely killed very shortly after she went missing and was later placed in the area where she was found. Initially, this information was withheld from the public in an effort to not compromise the police's investigation. The pathologist had suggested that she would have died sometime between 3:30 p.m. and 7 p.m. on the day that she went missing. The level of decomposition had made it near impossible to tell if she had been assaulted. On January 25th, 1999, a funeral for Kirsty was held at St. Stephen's Anglican Church in Ashburton. Somewhere between 500 and 700 people came to pay respects. Kirsty was cremated, and her urn was placed in a memorial garden at the Bentley home. Considering this now to be a homicide, police began their investigation immediately. They first ordered a no-fly zone over and around the surrounding area where she was found. They took plaster casts of all the tire tracks found around the area for further examination. They asked for the public's help in recalling cars that may have passed the area around the time of Kirsty's abduction and murder. They also sought out help by asking the cannabis growers in the area to come forward and share if they saw anything at all suspicious around the area. This plea, unfortunately, yielded nothing of use. Once the local news media got involved, it quickly became one of the most talked about cases in New Zealand. There was a lot of attention surrounding Kirsty and what had happened to her, and police were hopeful that someone somewhere would have felt compelled to come forward. They thought that because the two men that had found her had gone to police, even though they risked getting in trouble themselves, that more people might come forward in an effort to help solve this crime. The two men that had found her said they were prompted to come forward after seeing her mother Jill on a local news broadcast. This really did not go as planned, as news stations had published reports about conflicting information released by police, including how Kirsty had been discovered, and reports were made before she had been formally identified. The Bentley family was also under intense pressure in the several days surrounding when she had been found and subsequently identified. Police had a difficult time narrowing down the suspects, as so many had been initially identified, and more came faster than they were able to clear them. The suspect list would hover to as low as 20 to as many as several hundred. Several of the potential suspects had gotten varying degrees of media attention, which might have been why there had been so many, which certainly slowed down police's efforts. Very early on in the investigation, Kirsty's father Sid and her brother John were thought of as suspects. This most likely stemmed from Sid not being able to provide a solid alibi for his whereabouts on the day of Kirsty's disappearance. At first, he had said he had been in Christchurch and then Littleton, but had then later claimed that he had hit his head on a cabinet door and forgotten that he was in Ashburton for a large part of the day. It was unknown what his exact whereabouts were that day, but this is all very suspicious to me that was his story. He has temporary amnesia. I don't know. Later, family members said they believe that Sid might have been embarrassed to admit where he was or what he was doing that day, but no one in the family believes that he was in any way involved. Police conducted a search of the Bentley home and did luminol testing throughout. Nothing of value was revealed in these tests. Both John and Sid denied any involvement in her disappearance and murder, and they were quickly cleared by police. It was believed that the perpetrator was someone who knew Kirsty or knew the Bentley family, just based on the nature of the crime and where her body was found. A farm worker named Barry Hepburn was also a suspect that was looked at closely when he didn't show up for work on New Year's Day. He is deceased now, but would have been 52 at the time, and was known to walk his dog along the river trail, and several people had reported seeing him in the area. When he was later seen, his appearance was dramatically different. He was clean-shaven, which was an uncharacteristic look for him, but after looking into him further, he was then quickly ruled out. Another local resident named Charlie Smith was investigated after it was discovered that he had repainted his Ford Falcon and was said to have boasted about playing a role in Kirsty's death. This story was found to not be credible during further investigation. he was ultimately ruled out as well. One of the more prominent suspects was a man named Russell John Tully. An uncovered news report from March 2017 revealed that Russell was being investigated for the 2014 murder of 2 employees at the Ashburton Work and Income offices. Russell had been known to be active in and around the area of Ashburton that Kirsty went missing. He vehemently denied he had any involvement. He was eventually eliminated as a suspect in May 2018 when he was able to provide a detailed account of where he had been living, working, and spending time at the time of Kirsty's murder. After police were able to confirm his whereabouts and collect witness statements from people from this area as well, he was no longer suspected of having any involvement in Kirsty's murder. In the months following Kirsty's discovery, a tip received by police was further looked into. Police asked the public for help in getting any information on a large green van. A mechanic in the area had first reported seeing the van to police in the general vicinity around the same time of Kirsty's disappearance. He noticed the van since it was pretty uncommon and made a point to make a note of it. There were several other witnesses in the area that had recalled seeing the same van around the same time. The van was described as one being commonly used by tourists in the area, which was concerning since this would likely mean that whoever had rented it would most likely be long gone by now. This van in particular was said to be either green or blue-green and had a Comer branding on the front. This van was relatively rare, and only 2 vans matching its description were believed to have ever been in New Zealand. Because of the van's rarity, police felt this was what they needed to make a break in the case. Since being made public, several more people came forward with reports of sightings. All of these reports were pored over, and every lead about this van was followed. Unfortunately, nothing more came of this, and the van itself was never actually found, which is very odd, seeing as though New Zealand is an island and only so big, so there's only so far and so many places that this van could go. And my guess is that it was concealed away in someone's garage, or repainted and hiding in plain sight, or even shipped off to another country, and now it's leading a whole new life. In 2014, the case files were transferred, and the new inspector declared that the investigation was open and would continue to remain open until the case was solved. Kirsty's father, Sid, passed away in 2015 of esophageal cancer. Very shortly after his death, a woman had come forward and, wishing to remain anonymous, claimed that she had suspected her ex-boyfriend of being involved with the murder. He had already been named a person of interest at the very beginning of the case and had been interviewed by police then. She stated that when he was intoxicated, he had blatantly admitted to his involvement in Kirsty's murder. He had apparently done this on several occasions. However, it's not entirely clear if she had decided to change her official statement, since this man was never formally charged or investigated further, which I think these statements certainly warrant that. After the news of Sid's death, there was a brief moment of renewed interest in Kirsty's case, but any leads that were pursued at this time brought forth nothing that police didn't already know. In 2018, police formally released a statement confirming that Russell John Tully was no longer considered a suspect. Later that year, It was announced that because advances in DNA technology that were not available 20 years prior, they were hopeful that the clothes found near the scene were able to be tested. As far as I was able to tell, any testing that might have been conducted did not yield any suspects. New Zealand police had offered a $100,000 reward in July of 2022 for any information or evidence leading to the identity of the person or persons responsible for Kirsty's death. As of right now, this case is still open and under active investigation. So far, there have been no new leads or developments. As always, let me know your thoughts on this case. I hope that in the future, I am able to share an update with you, and that one day Kirsty's killer will be brought to justice. Always, always, always keep an eye on your surroundings and let someone trusted know where you are, even if you are just out walking your dog. Always be vigilant and careful. And that is all I have for you today. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you learned something, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.